Hey guys, Joe here from Wild Aquatics and Exotics. This is the second video in our Introduction to Marine Aquarium series where we'll take you step by step through the basic theory of setting up and maintaining your first saltwater tank. In today's video, we're going to run through a beginner's guide to the equipment you'll need to start up your first marine tank. We'll cover a rundown on the essential equipment for a marine tank, the minimum equipment needed for a fish-only marine tank, and the equipment needed for a reef tank. And if you find this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more marine aquarium guides. Marine aquariums are more complex than freshwater setups, mainly because saltwater fish and corals require much more stable water conditions and specialised equipment to thrive. So here's a breakdown of the standard equipment you'll need for a marine tank. Firstly, the tank itself. For marine aquariums, you're far better off purchasing a marine-specific aquarium. This isn't just because rimless tanks look better than ones with lids, but because they have the sump and pipework included. Sumps are basically separate containers of water designed to house equipment, which is stored in the cabinet below. They make the overall aesthetic of the tank cleaner, as you can have less equipment in the display tank, but also provide extra water volume to the aquarium, which assists in overall water chemistry stability. Also, if you intend to install high-end lights to keep corals, you may not be able to attach these to tanks with lids pre-installed. On this note, ideally avoid tanks designed for freshwater, as these may not be suitable for conversion to saltwater, more often than not because the marine equipment simply does not fit inside it, hence why a sump is more beneficial. Secondly, filtration. As usual for all aquariums, you will need some kind of way of providing biological and mechanical filtration. As mentioned in the previous video, live rock serves as the biological filtration in marine aquariums. Because it also acts as the decoration in the aquarium, this is already taken care of for you. For mechanical filtration, however, you have a couple of options. Like with freshwater aquariums, although you could use a hang-on-the-back or canister filter, these are very old-fashioned and far less effective than modern-day methods, but can work for fish-only tanks. Although they work well at trapping debris, the only time that we ever see these employed on reef tanks are when someone tries to convert a freshwater system, which again is not recommended. Instead, the modern approach to filtration in marine tanks has two parts. One part mechanical filtration for trapping larger pieces of debris, and the second part being skimming. For simply trapping the debris, a filter sock in the sump is very effective. Filter socks are basically a net that traps large particles of organics as it flows into the sump. These should be cleaned out as often as possible, but usually weekly is fine. The protein skimmer, however, removes organic waste before it can break down into nitrate, keeping the water far cleaner. In saltwater, organic waste and proteins have a magnetic charge, and a protein skimmer will whisk up the water to make a froth with bubbles that the organics will magnetize to. Then, these bubbles rise into a collection cup which will fill up with waste to be disposed of. These are very effective, as they actually remove dissolved waste from the water column before it has the chance to decompose and cause nitrate to rise. Because of how effective these are, especially to a beginner, we'd recommend a protein skimmer on every marine tank. If you see people deliberately claiming they don't use skimmers, you should be aware that that skimmerless tank is a specific project to them, and they are challenging themselves rather than it being a comment about it being a non-essential piece of equipment. Next, water flow and circulation. Firstly, a return pump, if using a sump, returns the water from the sump back into the display tank. You can also purchase return pumps that have controllable, variable flow rates, which are an advantage in situations where you may not want a strong wave maker in the display, for example, seahorse or anemone tanks. Power heads or wave makers are essential for oxygenation and mimicking ocean currents, which are especially essential in reef tanks. They're also very useful to move debris from the substrate bed into the filter system, so have the bonus effect of helping with water quality. For lighting, in fish-only aquariums, any basic LED light will work, as the lighting would just be there to illuminate the aquarium. For reef tanks, however, high-quality LED, T5 or metal halide lights are necessary for coral growth, providing proper PAR levels and the appropriate spectrum to replicate the differences in depths of the water for certain corals. I.e., you can program in cool white for shallower water with SPS corals and deeper blues for deeper LPS corals. Again, you will really struggle with corals without a proper controllable LED light, so don't skimp out on this one if you're looking for a long-term reef tank. For heating, the heater will be exactly the same as one in a freshwater tank, and most marine tanks need to be kept around 24 to 26 degrees centigrade. So unless you're going particularly high budget, nothing fancy is required here, and fortunately, these can be placed in the sump. You'll also need water testing kits and some other equipment. Firstly, a refractometer, which measures salinity or salt concentration. In short, it's like a little telescope that you put a drop of water from the aquarium onto the lens, which will show you a reading of the salinity. Test kits, obviously for monitoring ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, pH, phosphate, calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium. You won't need the full set for fish-only systems, but you should keep the essentials for a fish-only tank. A reverse osmosis unit, which removes all impurities from the tap water, making 0 TDS water, which is the base water you'll be using to mix with salt. And a marine salt mix, which should be mixed only with RO before adding it to the tank. If you're starting with a fish-only with live rock tank, you don't need as much equipment as a full reef system. Here's the absolute minimum you'll need. For the aquarium itself, a minimum of 100 litres is required for stability, although frankly, the only reason most people get fish-only marine tanks is to keep larger, non-reef safe fish, in which case you're likely going to get a larger tank than a starter reef aquarium. The live rock, at least 1 kilogram per 10 litres of water for natural filtration. A basic heater. A budget powerhead or wave maker for water movement and oxygenation. A budget LED light, as no special lighting is required for the fish. For the filtration, ideally you will have a sump system which you will have a filter sock and protein skimmer. Again, ideally an RODI system yourself so that you can mix your own salt water, although this can be purchased from aquarium shops yourself. A refractometer to measure the salinity, and test kits, mainly for ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, and alkalinity. In summary, with a fish-only tank you can get away with less equipment, but you will be much more reliant on water changes to maintain water quality. Practically speaking, the equipment you will not have to purchase would be a high-end LED light and high-end wave makers, and some optional filtration equipment like media reactors. Reef tanks, however, require much more advanced equipment due to the delicate needs of corals. Apart from the lighting, the equipment for a reef tank is very similar to a fish-only tank. Obviously you'll need a high-quality reef light. Although you can use T5s or a metal halide light if you have pre-existing units, it's highly recommended instead to get a high-end LED unit to give consistent, correct intensity and spectrum, without the high electrical running costs or excess heat light bulbs can give off. For filtration, a sump is highly recommended to house the extra equipment. A filter sock and protein skimmer is also essential. You may also have to get a fancier powerhead than you would do in a fish-only tank. For example, something that would add randomization to the water flow to effectively mimic the random currents of the ocean. Again, an RODI unit yourself with a refractometer to measure the salinity, and in an ideal world, an auto top-off system which will help maintain stable salinity by replacing evaporated water. Some extra optional equipment that will assist you include media reactors, which allow efficient use of chemical filtration media like activated charcoal to remove impurities, and phosphate reactors to keep the phosphates at low levels, and dosing equipment for automation of adding calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium supplements as corals consume them. In summary, setting up a marine aquarium requires specific equipment and specific research at every step. But with proper planning and a sensible budget, you can build a thriving saltwater system very simply. If you found this guide helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more marine aquarium guides. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.